The Baldwin County Public School System, considered one of the finest educational environments in the entire state of Alabama, has a history beginning in the latter part of the 18th century, when, as records indicate, Alabama's first public schoolhouse was built in the North Baldwin County community of Tensaw in 1799. And at that time, nearly 10 years prior to Baldwin being organized as a county, the area remained geographically expanse. Agriculture served as king, and family farms dotted every section of the county. And in this era of extremely limited highway systems, individual communities built their own respective public schoolhouses, with the Board of Education supplying teachers to provide instruction. In the early part of the 20th century, the Baldwin County Public School System boasted over 80 separate school districts, each with their own individual public schoolhouse. And as time progressed, marked with improvements in transportation and engineering, numerous school districts were consolidated into nearby areas, leaving us today with very few of the original and historic public schoolhouses which distinguished Baldwin County, beginning in 1799, as the birthplace of Alabama's first public schoolhouse. This documentary, commissioned by the Honorable County Commissioners of Baldwin County and honorable members of the Baldwin County Board of Education, seeks to illuminate these few remaining and historic original public schoolhouses in an effort to pay tribute to one of the finest public school systems in Alabama. Located on the corner of Baldwin County Highway 138 and State Highway 225, the building previously known as the Crossroads School has served as an important educational landmark in Baldwin County for many years, with educational facilities in the Crossroads area beginning with the log schoolhouse constructed in the early 19th century. This facility on Baldwin County Highway 138 imbues a classic architectural style reminiscent of an earlier time. When the original building was constructed in the early part of the 20th century, it contained 2 rooms, and thereafter in 1953, the school provided 3 classrooms, cafeteria, and an auditorium. Today, the Crossroads School no longer serves as an active educational institution in Baldwin County. However, during its course of service, the Crossroads School touched many lives and continues to remain an important historic landmark in this expanse unincorporated community.
The first time I ever saw a Crossroads School was when I was about 6 years old. And my father was logging down in the Blakely community. And we had to pass by that beautiful white building. I remember seeing that beautiful white building. And in my mind, that community became the community of the White House. But it wasn't, it was Crossroads, and there was another community 5 miles away that was really White House Forks. But I was always confused in my mind about the two. And when I came to the central office to be in charge of school buildings, we had a lot of employees from those 2 buildings, and I learned that it was indeed a faux pas if you mixed up the names of those 2. And I did mix up the names of Crossroads and White House because of that beautiful white building that sat on the edge. And it took some years for my employees to forgive me for making that faux pas. The people in White House Forks and Crossroads were fiercely competitive about all matters, baseball teams or schools or anything else. And when one school got something, you better furnish it for the other school, or you would be in trouble. But even today, I'm confessing this and hope nobody from those communities hears me say that even today I sometimes confuse the names of those 2 communities because of that beautiful white building that sat there. I think it was built right at 1920. In my time, we increased the size of Crossroads School by bringing in the former Tensaw School building. It was a 2.5-room building. It was a replica of the Lillian building that we talked about earlier. It was built in such manner that it could be a 12th grade school, and that little half room could be a home economics department. 6 grades in each of the room, and a little kitchen there that could be used for teaching of home economics. And then, of course, it was also used for the home economics, the county home economics department, who went around to teach adults in those communities how to can vegetables and all that sort of good thing. How we got that building to Crossroads makes a good story. It had to come. The Tensaw building was on the Highway 59, which led to Baymonette to Crossroads. That was the shortest route. But Majors Creek Bridge was too narrow to accept that building. It was we could not turn immediately south. We had to turn north and go through the community of Blackshear, which was several miles away, then another 12 miles across to Lottie, and from Lottie we made our way to Perdita, crossed the railroad tracks at Perdita, passed in front of the Perdita School with that building, came down, turned right on Highway 31, turned left on Phillipsville Road, came down that one until we hit the road that goes to Bell Fountain, I forget the number, and then I don't even remember how we got through the dirt roads from that point to the beginning of the Hurricane Road on Highway 59 south of Baymonette, but we did. And at that point we encountered our first traffic light, which had to be removed to let us get the building through. Now, we had taken our own maintenance crews to Tensaw to prepare the building for removal. And the old roof was unusable and it had to have a new roof. So we simply removed the old sheathing and discarded it, took the rafters down and laid the rafters on top of the classroom and covered the whole business with visqueen, which is a plastic sheet to keep it from getting wet, because we knew we would encounter rain before we could get the roof back up. So the roof was down flat. And with that, we were able to negotiate all of the obstacles until we got to the Hurricane Road. And when we got there, we were almost home to Crossroads. But it was a circuitous route, and it took 2 days to make that passage down there. Then we quickly threw all of our maintenance crews there to throw those rafters back up. And this time we used plywood for sheathing and tar paper over that quickly. Then you had some time to get the shingles on before the rains came. But we managed it, and that was one building we managed to move without getting wet. And it has served that community well in several different capacities. We were able to use one room of that building for a cafeteria, one room for a kindergarten, and release another room in the main building. And the little extra half room came in useful when we made it into a cafeteria later. Made the whole building into a cafeteria later. Our maintenance crews tended to come from the areas outlying from Baymonette, and so many of them came from the Crossroads community. Now, the reason for that was that we paid such a low salary that we could not attract anyone in the field of maintenance anywhere south of, say, Stapleton. There were just greater opportunities for employment south of Stapleton in that time. You couldn't hire anyone to paint or do plumbing or do carpentry work on school buildings with a salary that we had to pay in those days. And we had to take people who had their own homes in rural areas, who had some other means of support than their regular work. In other words, there had to be somebody who kept a milk cow on his premises, raised a pig or two in the pen, and had 4 or 5 acres of corn that he raised for his animals. He had to somewhat have to live on the land. And then these people were able to achieve a better standard of living because they helped each other. They became a very tight-knit group, these mechanics that worked in the school bus shop and the maintenance workers, who all came from Perdita or Crossroads or White House Forks. When one of their wells at home failed, Saturday morning the entire crew pulled his well and fixed his pump. When his roof leaked, the entire crew on Saturday and perhaps Sunday assembled at his house and put him on a new roof. They just helped each other, and they had all of the skills that a homeowner needed to maintain his home. So that because they were such a tight-knit group, because they were so talented, and because they knew each other so well, they were able to work for the Board of Education and enjoy a standard of living quite a bit higher than their salary range would allow them to do. It was a remarkable group of people that worked in that capacity for the Board of Education in those days. They were loyal to the Board of Education, loyal to the nth degree. There was no such thing as overtime. And there was no such thing as a week when every man didn't put in many extra hours at night and on weekends. They did whatever it took. In those days, there were no spare buses. And if a clutch went out and a bus on a bus 40 miles away, somebody, 2 people, 2 mechanics, had to go there and take that clutch out and put in a new one during the night so that that bus could make its run the next morning. And this was rain or shine, summer or winter. There's a wonderful story about one of our mechanics who was at Taylor's Still, late, almost before dark, lying on his back on the ground, working up under the school bus, and he felt something crawling across him. Big rattlesnake. And he disciplined himself and froze until that snake crawled away. Under a school bus, down in the sand. And I reminisce about this at this particular point because so many of these people lived in the Crossroads and White House Forks area.
Remembering my days here at Crossroads, I remember how the parents were so willing to help, and at that time we had no play equipment, and that's how we, by putting on plays, and that's how we got our money to get play equipment. And the children loved their softball. And the teacher played with them. I played with them. It started off in those days, we had, I call it now, really enjoyed school. We had the Bible reading and the patriotic songs and flag pledge, and I took up lunch money and count every day, and lunches were only 10 cents. All subjects to 2 grades. A busy day every day. Anything from math to geography, and just all subjects. And I had a schedule that we took geography half a year, and forgot the other, that we had a half a year, so we would get it all in. I first came here in 1947 and just went into a normal teaching day, and we had to teach PE, all subjects that we had to teach. We had 4 classrooms and 3 teachers, and each of us had 2 grades. The auditorium was a notorious place. When it was raining, we all met in the auditorium, and we would put on, especially after TV came in, the children would put on TV shows, their favorite TV show, and entertain till the buses came. And we would sing, play games, and the auditorium was had a skylight. At that time, it had a skylight right up there. We had the most wonderful cooks. They would make that bread, those rolls. You could smell them over to the store. They were so good. The children, we always had a Christmas tree. And the list of the number of things, gifts that I received, I made a list so that whenever they came up to me the first day of after Christmas holidays, they would say, "Did you like my gift?" And I'd say, "Oh yes, I love that gift." And whatever it was, I'd name it, whatever the child had given me, because I couldn't possibly remember all of that, just exactly what they had given me. not all of it. And I received a most wonderful gift that I thought was just so unusual, and it was. It's a purse made from a gallon bucket, and pictures on the outside, pictures from magazines, good, nice pictures. And I just thought it was so unusual until I have kept it all these years, and I still admire it. It was made by Andre Fuller. You all just missed half your lives. You didn't have a chance to come up and build a fire for heat for the children when they got here. I had to build it in a pot-bellied stove, and so it would be warm when they got here. And then, after things got a little better, they got gas heaters here. But I like the pot-bellied stove the best because the heaters were so hard to turn on. I would hurt my hand every time. I like the pot-bellied stove the best because we had weeks at my home. My brothers and sisters had weeks of building a fire in the fireplace, and so I knew how to build a fire. I didn't know too much about those gas heaters. The parents brought the wood. We had the coal during the pot-bellied stove days because it wasn't possible to just burn all wood. The parents it was hard on parents too to get wood here. And then they started bringing coal, the Board of Education.
My earliest memory of Crossroads School was as a child traveling through this area. I guess it must have been the middle 20s, and my dad was a logging man, and he was headed south to log the Blakely battlegrounds. He was going to cut off all that big pine timber down there. And as a child, I came down with him on a trip to move his equipment. Remember, he had a tremendous Nash truck. It was a 2.5 tonner, which was a monster in those days when compared to the Model Ts. And we were making a trip down with one of his camp cars. We left home early morning. Sometime late in the morning, we came to civilization. We had come down this 3-trail road from Stockton and climbed this hill, and lo and behold, off on our right was this big white house. It was a monster to me in those days, and it just became a landmark for me in later years. Many years later, when I worked for the Board of Education, about 1960, I became supervisor of buildings and transportation, and it was my business to examine and take care of problems that related to school maintenance. The first problem that I remember dealing with at Crossroads School was the noisy gas heaters that had just been hung in each classroom to replace the old pot-bellied stoves. Teachers were complaining they couldn't teach. And I came down to see what the problem was. I went in and I sat down in a classroom. I couldn't hear a thing. I don't see how they could have possibly been teaching much. They just had to shut them off if they wanted to get something across to kids. We tried everything in the world we knew to do. We tried to slow down the speed of the fans, but when we slowed them down, the fans would overheat and had an automatic cutoff in them. And that stopped the whole process. We finally had to speed the fans back up, and that wasn't popular with these teachers. We finally got a new type of fan that had a squirrel cage fan instead of the old propeller type, and we replaced them, and that helped some. But we never did lick the whole problem of suspended gas heater fans until we went to a whole different type of a heating system. Crossroads School was probably one of the best maintained schools in the county at that particular time because of the attraction of these wonderful rolls that these cafeteria workers made. About half of our maintenance staff lived in Crossroads, and they were kind of favorites down here anyway. And but the other attraction was those good rolls. A broken window just was not unattended very long at Crossroads School because somebody wanted to come fix it. Old-time people in the community, I was also responsible for school lands in those days. And we had rumors that the Board of Education owned one of the an acre of land somewhere in this area that had the first Crossroads School on it. But I could not find any records at the Board of Education that we owned it. But one of the employees, Albert Reben, lived in this area, and he remembered, he said, where the old schoolhouse was, and he undertook to take me there. We searched the woods north of here. I came down here on the Saturday even. We made several trips. And he could never find, the woods had changed too much, and he could never find this spot where he thought that the old school existed. I personally don't believe that the Board of Education ever owned any property anywhere other than here. I think there may have been others, I know there were other buildings that were used as schools, and probably with teachers that were supplied by the county. But I think there were private buildings that were staffed by them. It was a kind of an elusive search. We never found the area where the old school was supposed to exist. Where I'm sitting right now was the auditorium, and I'm sitting in a little passageway that went around behind the stage. This area to my left was a small stage, and there was another little room behind it. The classroom immediately to my right was being used as a cafeteria kitchen. They did not have any area where the children could eat. They had to take the food from the kitchen and eat at their desks around in this area. We tried to remedy that later on in the 80s. The state legislature had been giving us much better pupil-teacher ratios. We had more teachers per pupil, and they didn't give us any money to build rooms for us. And then we came in with the new kindergarten program. No money to build rooms for them. And out of desperation, we began to gather up all of the old school buildings that had been abandoned over there and moving them to new sites, renovating them for classroom use. And we decided to move the Tensaw building, which was a 2.5 room building, by the way. The little half room was a kind of a home economics room. The There had been a 12th grade school at one time at Tensall with 6 grades in one room and 6 grades in the other. And they had a little home economics program that was taught by the county agent. County agent would come to the school once a month, and all the girls would gather in for instruction and all food preparation, child care, and that. And the boys would go to 4-H club. Well, we decided to move that building here to Crossroads and use the 2 rooms for an eating and a kitchen area, and the little home economic room became the new kitchen. The teachers were so nice and receptive, and when somebody walked in, they immediately stopped. And what impressed me about this school, they introduced you to they introduced the children they introduced you to the children. They turned to their children first and said, "Children, this is so-and-so who does such and such. This is your superintendent of education." Their emphasis was on the children here.